Sophie for the finger pointing. Ain't nobody want to license that. They got mad with Sophie for calling out these to come out against men playing in women's sports in a profiled article by ESPN. Good for now. I want to go on ESPN to see if I can pull up the full article, because now that I'm reading this, it's another paragraph is where we want to get to before we get into more of this article here, because this talks about the MAGA president. Nothing but Caitlin Clark, the needle mover, does surprise me just another day for the Queen and the league this month of July. And we're supposed to be celebrating 250 years of the country this month. And to me,
right out of the gate, the take here is that Sophie Cunningham has become the WNBA's punching bag, dragged for the finger point, dragged for the data center's post, and now dragged again for a new comment. That's a real pattern worth naming. 3 separate controversies in a matter of weeks, all centered on one bench player who wasn't even a household name 2 years ago. Whether you think the criticism is fair or not, the sheer volume of it says she's become one of the most covered personalities in the league, which sets up exactly why this next story blew up the way it did.
Talking about this is a thing. Now, Sophie Cunningham has become the latest person to speak out against men athletes being able to compete against women in sports, which is very, very wrong. Now, with that being said, let's jump right into this thing. So ESPN released an article today, probably like an hour ago, talking about Sophie and this whole situation with men's athlete. Shout out to Clay Travis. He stated Sophie Cunningham just became one of the first current American female pro athletes.
So here's the actual headline. Sophie Cunningham has spoken publicly about competitive fairness for women and girls in sports relative to transgender athletes. One of the most contested topics in sports policy right now. Not something invented for this video. My take is simple. This isn't some fringe internet argument anymore. It just came off a Supreme Court term where the justices ruled on state-level sports bans, so a WNBA player weighing in was always going to be national news the second it hit print. Let's get into what she actually said.
Now, this is the article here. This is the section where Sophie came out and spoke out against all of this stuff that has been happening. It's being reported that you say she's a MAGA Barbie, as some corners of the internet have taken to calling her projections. She says because what she looks like.
Clay Travis framed this as Cunningham becoming one of the first current American female pro athletes to speak out this directly in a major outlet. And yeah, that's a notable milestone for a WNBA locker room specifically. But let's not pretend she's the first woman in sports to say something like this. Riley Gaines has been the loudest national voice on this exact issue for years, just not as an active pro athlete. What makes this different is the platform, ESPN, mid-season, tied to her own name, not the originality of the position.
And where she's from. She'll weigh in on how to protect women's sport. She says, because she's in the world and feels qualified to speak on the world, I got a lot of negative feedback about me hating trans. I'm like, I never once said that. She says, I think that I am here to extend love, but I also think with that love is truth.
Before we even get to the substance, the profile spends real time on the MAGA Barbie nickname, and Cunningham's pushback is that people are projecting a political identity onto her based on how she looks and where she's from. That's a fair complaint on its face. Plenty of athletes get boxed into a caricature the second they say one thing that doesn't fit a predictable script. Let's actually hear what she said instead of what the internet decided she said.
I got mad at her for the data centers. Now, people mad at Sophie Cunningham for calling out men's athlete wanting to participate in women's sports. Yes, we're still talking about this. This is a thing. Now, Sophie Cunningham has become the latest person to speak out against men athletes being able to compete against women in sports, which is very, very wrong. Now, with that being said, let's jump right into this thing. So ESPN released the article.
Here's her exact framing. She says she's gotten a lot of backlash for supposedly hating trans people, denies ever saying that, and says her actual position is that she wants to protect young girls in a locker room or a sport from having to compete against biological men. That is a real specific policy stance, not a slur, not name-calling, and it lines up with the same argument that's been playing out in courtrooms and state houses all year. My honest take, some critics are calling this blatantly transphobic, and some fans are calling her brave for saying it publicly. Both reactions are happening in real time, and that split is the actual story here, not just her quote in isolation.
Being honest, and I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in a sport who shouldn't have to go against biologically men. That's what Sophie Cunningham stated.
ESPN didn't bury this. They built a full exclusive profile around her. Love her or hate her, Sophie Cunningham won't be ignored. That headline alone tells you where her media value sits right now. She doesn't need to be the best player on the floor to be the most talked about one. Love it or hate it. That's real cultural currency in a league that's still fighting for mainstream attention. And it's part of why this profile ran the way it did, instead of getting buried on page 6 of the website.
Now, this is the article here. This is the section where Sophie came out and spoke out against all of this stuff that has been happening. It's being reported that you say she's a MAGA Barbie. As some corners of the internet have taken to calling her projections, she says, because what she looks like.
And then the profile pivots to her insisting none of this maps onto a clean political identity. I'm very much in the middle. I agree with things on both sides, disagree with things on both sides. I actually think that's the most interesting quote in the whole piece, because it doesn't fit either side's narrative cleanly. People wanted her to be a full-blown culture war figure or nothing at all, and the actual quotes read a lot more like someone picking her spots than someone running a campaign.
Love her or hate her, Sophie Cunningham won't be ignored. This is the article right here that they did on Sophie Cunningham. This article came out today. As you guys can see here, there's pictures here with Sophie Cunningham. And I believe this is where the viewership number came from, 3.2 million, more than Caitlin Clark. I told y'all, Sophie Cunningham is going to be bigger than Caitlin because of what she stands for. That's just how I feel. Shout out to Sophie. She's from my home state here in Missouri. Now, Sophie Cunningham played basketball in her day. She played for Mizzou.
Now let's get to the other half of this video, because Caitlin Clark just broke another viewership record. 2.5 million average viewers for the Fever Liberty game, peaking at 3 million, the second most watched WNBA game since 2000. That's not hype. That's Nielsen data. No matter what storyline is dominating the news cycle that week, Clark is still the one number nobody in this league can replicate.
Average, you are thrilling itches. Well, Caitlin Clark is the common denominator in every single top watch game outside of one since she's joined the league. No matter what hate train is thrown her way, people still tune in and watch. That's all the networks care about. Be ready for 50.
And it doesn't stop there. The Fever Aces game averaged 2.64 million viewers on NBC and Peacock, the most watched WNBA game of the entire 2026 season. And Clark is the common denominator in basically every top-rated broadcast since she entered the league. My take? Whatever the league office is doing to market this team, it's Clark's name on the marquee doing the actual heavy lifting, and every ratings report this season backs that up.
This month of July. And we're supposed to be celebrating 250 years of the country this month. And to me, as patriotic as Sophie is, you would think she'll be getting more love with it being 250 years of the U.S. of A. And she's always showing love to the country. She always showing love to my home state of Missouri. I like Sophie. Just like I told y'all before, whenever I was up there, she was showing love to the fans. I don't get why people dislike her so much. You know, she made a name for herself as a bench player. And anybody that's hating.
Here's the part that should bother the league office specifically. While Clark is delivering record after record, Cunningham, her closest teammate and on-court protector, is dealing with real, escalating backlash this month. You can have strong opinions about whether her comments deserve that reaction, but there's no denying the gap between the numbers she's helping generate for this league and the goodwill she's getting back from it.
On somebody for wanting to better themselves in their career, you as a hater. So maybe you should look in the mirror and ask yourself the question. You know what I'm saying? She ain't copy nobody like all the other people do, copy people all the damn time. She came in here and did it her way, doing it herself. You know, she ain't wearing costumes, copying people. She ain't doing none of that. She did it her way and herself, and I take my hat off to Sophie.
There's also a personal layer here worth sitting with. Cunningham's been vocal about her home state of Missouri and about the country generally, and the host read is that someone that visibly patriotic should be getting more warmth this particular month, not less. That's a fair emotional beat for the audience, even if you don't agree with every position she's taken. Nobody's arguing she isn't a real, specific person with a real hometown behind the headlines.
Average, you are thrilling. Itches. Oh, Caitlin Clark is the common denominator in every single top watch game outside of one since she's joined the league. No matter what hate train is thrown her way, people still tune in and watch. That's all the networks care about. Be ready for 50.
Close it out with the actual receipts on her career. She made her name as a bench player who worked her way into being one of the most recognizable faces in the league, without copying anyone else's persona to get there. Say what you want about any specific opinion she shared this year. That part of the story is just true, and it's worth separating from the debate everyone's currently having about her.
Average, you are thrilling. Itches. Oh, Caitlin Clark is the common denominator in every single top watch game outside of one since she's joined the league. No matter what hate train is thrown her way, people still tune in and watch. That's all the networks care about. Be ready for 50.